Hello, my dear English learners. Welcome back to Native Flow English. I'm Sarah, your teacher and friend, and I'm so happy you're here.
Today, I want to start with a simple story about a man named Daniel. Daniel works in an office, and every morning he takes the bus to work. One day, while he was waiting for the bus, he met a neighbor named Mrs. Johnson, who was carrying several heavy grocery bags. Daniel decided to help her carry the bags to her house before rushing back to catch his bus. Now here is the interesting part. Because Daniel took the time to help, he missed the bus. At first he was upset, but later, when he took the next bus, he met an old university friend named Robert, who was also on that bus. They had not seen each other for many years, and this unexpected meeting brought back many memories. This story shows us that sometimes what looks like a small problem can actually be a blessing. Think about the useful expressions here. Daniel said to Mrs. Johnson, "Let me give you a hand." This phrase means, "Let me help you." It is very common in English when you want to politely offer assistance. You could also say, "Do you need a hand?" Or, "Can I help you carry that?" These phrases are not only polite, but they also make your English sound natural. Now let us reflect. How can you use this in your daily life? Imagine you are at the office and a colleague is carrying a big stack of papers. You could say, "Hey, do you need a hand with those?" Or, if you are at home and your husband or wife is preparing dinner, you might say, "Do you need a hand in the kitchen?" These small expressions make conversations warm, supportive, and natural. Another part of Daniel's story teaches us about connecting with people. When he met his old friend Robert, he said, "It has been ages since we last met." This is a friendly way to say that a very long time has passed. Instead of only saying, "Long time no see," which is casual, you can also say, "It has been ages," or "It has been forever." These phrases add variety to your vocabulary. Let me share another example. A woman named Sarah once told me about her neighbor, Mr. Carter. She had not seen him for nearly 10 years, but one afternoon, they met at the park. Sarah smiled and said, "It has been ages, Mr. Carter. How have you been?" He laughed and replied, "Yes, time really flies." This short conversation feels natural, and it is something you can practice in your own English. So, here is a question for you. When was the last time you met an old friend or someone you had not seen for years? How would you start the conversation in English? You could begin with, "It has been ages. How are you doing these days?" Practicing this line out loud will help you sound more fluent and confident. Now, let us continue with another small story, this time about a teacher named Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith always told his students, "Every problem has two sides. You can complain, or you can learn something from it." One rainy day, the classroom ceiling started leaking. The students looked annoyed, but Mr. Smith smiled and said, "Let us see this as an opportunity. Instead of sitting inside, let us go outside under the shelter and practice a lesson with real-life examples." The students enjoyed it so much that they remembered that lesson for years. This story reminds us that the way you respond to situations can change your experience. From this story, notice the phrase opportunity. Mr. Smith said, "Let us see this as an opportunity." This is a useful mindset in English and in life. Instead of saying, "This is a problem," you can say, "This is an opportunity to learn." You can try it in your daily conversations. For example, if your bus is late, you could say, "Well, it is an opportunity to read a few pages of my book. Let me tell you about Anna." She recently moved to a new city for her job. On her first day at work, she felt nervous because everything was unfamiliar. The office looked different. The people spoke quickly, and she did not know where anything was. Instead of staying quiet, Anna decided to introduce herself. She walked up to a colleague and said, "Hi, my name is Anna. I just joined the company today. Could you please show me around?" Her colleague David smiled and said, "Of course, I would be happy to." That small act of courage changed her entire experience. By the end of the day, she already had 2 new friends at work. From this story, notice the expression, "Could you please show me around?" This is a polite and effective way to ask for help in English. You could also say, "Would you mind helping me?" Or "Can you tell me how this works?" These phrases are polite and they make conversations easier, especially in new environments. Now think about yourself. If you joined a new office, a new school, or even a new community group, what would you say to start a conversation? A simple line like, "Hi, I am new here. Could you help me understand how things work?" can break the ice. Breaking the ice means starting a friendly conversation with someone you do not know yet. Here is another story, this time about a man named Peter. Peter loved gardening, but one day his neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, accidentally stepped on his plants while visiting. Peter felt upset at first, but instead of showing anger, he said politely, "Accidents happen, Mrs. Lewis. Do not worry." She felt relieved and even offered to help him replant the flowers. By choosing kind words, Peter turned a small conflict into a stronger friendship. Now let us look at the useful phrase here. Accidents happen. This short sentence is very powerful in English. It shows understanding and forgiveness. Instead of blaming someone, you can simply say, "Accidents happen." For example, if someone spills tea on your table, you could respond, "No problem. Accidents happen." This makes you sound calm and polite, and it helps keep good relationships. Let me share another moment with you. A friend of mine, Clara, once dropped her phone while we were walking together. She looked embarrassed, but I smiled and said, "Do not worry. Accidents happen." She laughed and relaxed, and we continued walking. Notice how simple words can change someone's mood. Now, let us focus on a useful habit for practicing English. When you listen to stories like these, try to repeat the key expressions out loud. For example, repeat with me, "Let me give you a hand." Then, "It has been ages." And also, "Accidents happen." By repeating them, you train your mouth and your brain to use English naturally in real conversations. Next, let us hear about a young man named Thomas. He worked in a busy restaurant as a waiter. One evening, the restaurant was full, and he accidentally brought the wrong dish to a customer named Mr. Green. Instead of complaining loudly, Mr. Green smiled and said, "I think there has been a small mistake. This is not what I ordered." Thomas quickly apologized, corrected the order, and even brought a free drink as a gesture of respect. Mr. Green's polite way of speaking helped solve the problem quickly and respectfully. From this, pay attention to the phrase, "I think there has been a small mistake." This is an excellent way to speak politely when something goes wrong. Instead of saying, "This is wrong," you can say, "I think there has been a small mistake." This shows calmness and respect. For example, if you receive the wrong bill at a shop, you can politely say, "Excuse me, I think there has been a small mistake with the bill." This kind of language helps you sound confident and respectful at the same time. All right, Let us dive deeper and continue this episode with more engaging daily life examples and natural expressions that will help you practice English at the B2 level. Keep listening carefully and try to imagine each situation in your mind. This will make the practice more effective and help you remember the vocabulary and phrases more easily. I want to begin with a story about Michael. Michael is an engineer who often has to travel for work. One morning, he arrived at the train station only to find that his train had been delayed by 1 hour. At first, he felt frustrated, but instead of just waiting without doing anything, he decided to make the most of his time. He took out his notebook and began writing down ideas for his next project. Later, when the train finally arrived, he realized that he had completed half of his work already. He told himself, "Every delay can be a chance to focus." From Michael's story, the useful phrase is, "Make the most of your time." This expression means to use your time wisely and productively instead of wasting it. For example, if you are waiting in a long queue at the bank, you could take out a book or practice English words on your phone. Instead of feeling annoyed, you can think, "I will make the most of this time." Now let me share another situation. Emma is a mother of 2 children. One weekend, her family decided to go on a picnic at the park. They packed food, drinks, and games. But as soon as they arrived, it started raining heavily. Instead of complaining, Emma said cheerfully, "Why not turn this into an indoor picnic?" So, all right, let us continue building this long and engaging practice session. I will keep the language clear, natural, and useful for B2 level learners. Pay attention to the stories, phrases, and examples, and try to repeat the key expressions out loud when you hear them. That way, you train your speaking as well as your listening. Let us start with a story about Laura. Laura works as a nurse in a busy hospital. One afternoon, a patient's family member grew impatient and said loudly, "Why is this taking so long?" Instead of reacting defensively, Laura calmly replied, "Thank you for your patience. We are doing everything we can to make sure the process goes smoothly." Her calm and professional words helped reduce the tension immediately. From Laura's response, notice the phrase, "Thank you for your patience." This is an excellent way to acknowledge someone's frustration while keeping the atmosphere polite. You can use it in daily life too. For example, if your husband is waiting while you finish getting ready, you might say, "Thank you for your patience." Or at work, if a colleague waits while you complete a task, you could say the same. Now let us look at another example. Mark is a university student who often works part-time at a cafe. One day, a customer ordered a cappuccino, but received a latte by mistake. Instead of complaining rudely, the customer said, "Excuse me, I actually ordered a cappuccino. Could you please change it?" Mark immediately corrected the order and thanked the customer for being polite. The key phrase here is, "Excuse me, I actually ordered." This is a gentle way to correct someone when they have made a mistake. Instead of saying, "This is wrong," you can politely say, "Excuse me, I actually ordered tea, not coffee." It makes the interaction smoother and friendlier. Here is another story. Linda is a mother who was helping her son prepare for a school project. The son grew frustrated and said, "This is too difficult. I cannot do it." Linda encouraged him by saying, "Take it step by step. You will get there." The boy calmed down, followed her advice, and eventually finished the project successfully. The phrase here is, "Take it step by step." This is very helpful in English conversations when someone feels overwhelmed. You can say it to yourself or to others. For example, if you are learning English and find speaking difficult, you can tell yourself, "Take it step by step." I will improve with practice. Now let me share a situation with Henry, a businessman who often gives presentations. Before one important meeting, the projector stopped working. Instead of panicking, Henry smiled and said, "Technology can be tricky sometimes. Let us continue without the slides." His calmness impressed the audience, and the presentation was still successful. From Henry's story, notice the phrase, "Technology can be tricky." This is a soft and friendly way to explain when something goes wrong with machines or devices. You can use it when your phone freezes, when the internet disconnects, or when your laptop shuts down unexpectedly. Instead of getting angry, you can say, "Technology can be tricky." Another character is Emily. She loves baking cakes. One day, she tried a new recipe but accidentally added too much sugar. When her husband tasted it, he laughed and said, "It is sweeter than usual but still delicious." Emily smiled and replied, "Next time I will be more careful." This small mistake became a fun memory instead of a problem. The phrase to notice here is, "Next time I will be more careful." It shows that you accept a mistake but also plan to improve in the future. You can use it in many situations. For example, if you arrive late to a meeting, you could say, "I am sorry I was late. Next time I will be more careful with my schedule." Now let us hear about Oliver. He went to the post office to send a package. The line was very long, but when he finally reached the counter, the worker said, "I am sorry, the system is down right now." Oliver could have been upset, but instead he replied, "I understand. I will come back later." His polite response made the situation easier for both of them. The phrase, "I understand," is very powerful in English. It shows empathy and calmness. You can use it when someone explains a problem. For example, if your friend says, "I cannot meet today because I am busy," you can reply, "I understand." It is short, but it shows kindness. Let us move to another person. Clara. Clara works as a tour guide. One day, while leading a group, heavy traffic delayed the bus. When they finally arrived at the museum, some visitors complained. Clara smiled and said, "Sometimes the journey takes longer than we expect, but now we are here and ready to enjoy it." Her positive attitude changed the group's mood, and everyone enjoyed the visit. Here, the phrase is longer than we expect. It is useful in daily conversations to talk about time. For example, "The meeting took longer than we expected," or "Cooking this dish takes longer than I expected." This phrase helps you explain delays politely. Next, let us hear about Andrew, a teacher. During class, one of his students asked a very difficult question. Instead of pretending to know everything, Andrew said honestly, "That is a good question. I do not know the answer right now, but I will find out and tell you tomorrow." The student respected his honesty and felt encouraged to keep asking questions. From Andrew's story, the useful phrase is, "That is a good question." It is a polite way to respond even when you do not know the answer immediately. You can use it at work, at school, or even in friendly conversations. For example, if someone asks, "Why do people celebrate this holiday?" and you do not know, you can say, "That is a good question. I will check and let you know." Here is another everyday story. Sophie was waiting at a pharmacy when a woman ahead of her dropped her wallet. Sophie quickly picked it up and said, "Excuse me, I think you dropped this." The woman smiled with relief and thanked her. That small act of kindness created a moment of trust between strangers. The key phrase is, "I think you dropped this." It is useful when you want to alert someone politely. For example, I think you dropped your pen, or I think you left your phone on the table. This simple phrase is easy to remember and very practical. Now let us talk about Ethan. He works in construction, and one day his team had to finish a project earlier than planned. The pressure was high, but Ethan encouraged his team by saying, "If we work together, we can finish this on time." His positive words motivated everyone, and they completed the task successfully. The useful phrase is, "if we work together." It shows teamwork and encouragement. You can use it with your family, your colleagues, or your friends. For example, if we work together, we can clean the house quickly. Or, if we work together, we can solve this problem faster. Another example comes from Hannah, who is a student preparing for exams. She was worried because she had too many subjects to study. Her father told her, "Do not try to do everything at once. Focus on one subject at a time." Hannah followed the advice and she felt less stressed and more productive. The phrase "one at a time" is very useful. It means to do things slowly and step by step. For example, if you are carrying heavy boxes, you can say, "I will take them one at a time." Or if you are solving problems, you can say, "Let us handle these one at a time. Now let us move to a workplace situation." Jacob works in an office, and one day his manager asked him to complete a task earlier than planned. Instead of saying, "I cannot do it," Jacob replied, "I will do my best to finish it by then." His manager appreciated his positive attitude, even if it was a challenge. The phrase to notice is, "I will do my best." This is polite and shows effort, even if you are not completely sure of the result. For example, if someone asks you to cook a new dish, you can say, "I will do my best." Or if a teacher asks you to improve your writing, you can say, "I will do my best." Another situation comes from Grace, who went to the supermarket. She realized she had forgotten her wallet after the cashier had scanned all her items. Instead of panicking, she said calmly, "I am so sorry, I forgot my wallet. Can you please keep these items aside for me while I go home to get it?" The cashier agreed, and everything was solved politely. The phrase, "keep these aside," is useful in shops, kitchens, or even at home. It means to separate something for later use. For example, if you are baking and want to save some flour, you could say, "Keep a little aside for dusting." Or at work, you might say, "Keep these papers aside until tomorrow's meeting." Now imagine Daniel again, the character from earlier stories. This time, he was driving to work when another car suddenly stopped in front of him. Instead of shouting or honking, he took a deep breath and said to himself, "Staying calm is better than getting angry." He continued driving safely, and his day went on peacefully. The phrase "staying calm is better than getting angry" is a good reminder for daily life. You can use it whenever you feel stressed. For example, if your internet stops working, instead of shouting, you can remind yourself, "Staying calm is better than getting angry." Let us begin with Rachel. She works as a receptionist in a hotel. One afternoon, a guest came to the desk and said, "The air conditioner in my room is not working." Rachel responded politely, "I am sorry for the inconvenience. I will send someone to fix it right away." The guest appreciated her professional response, and soon the problem was solved. The phrase, "I am sorry for the inconvenience" is very useful in professional settings. It shows respect when someone is facing a problem. You can also use it outside of work. For example, if someone is waiting for you while you finish something, you could say, "I am sorry for the inconvenience. I will be ready soon." Now let us hear about Alex. He recently started going to the gym. On his first day, he was not sure how to use the machines. Instead of guessing, he asked another person politely, "Excuse me, could you show me how to use this equipment?" The other person explained, and Alex avoided making mistakes. The phrase, "Could you show me how to," is very practical. You can use it in many situations. For example, "Could you show me how to use this app?" Or, "Could you show me how to get to the library?" It is polite and easy to remember. Here is another story about Margaret. She went shopping for clothes. She found a shirt she liked, but it was too expensive. Instead of leaving, she asked the shop assistant, "Do you have any discounts on this item?" To her surprise, the assistant said yes, and she bought it for a lower price. The phrase here is, "Do you have any discounts?" It is very useful when shopping. You can also say, "Is there a sale on this?" Or, "Do you have any offers today?" These phrases are practical for real-life conversations. Now let us talk about Tom. Tom is a delivery driver. One day, his van broke down while he was on his way to deliver a package. He immediately called his boss and said, "My van is broken down, but I will find another way to complete the delivery." His boss appreciated his honesty and determination. The key phrase is "broken down." It is often used for vehicles or machines when they stop working. For example, "My car broke down on the way to work," or "The washing machine has broken down." This is a very common phrase in English conversations. Next, let us look at Lily. She teaches English to young children. One day, a student spilled water on his book and looked upset. Lily smiled and said, "Do not worry, mistakes happen. We can dry it with a tissue." The child felt comforted and quickly returned to learning. The phrase "mistakes happen" is very helpful when you want to comfort someone. For example, if your friend forgets an appointment, you can say, "Do not worry, mistakes happen." It shows kindness and understanding. Now let me share a story about Adam. He was in a business meeting when someone asked him a difficult question. Adam took a moment to think and then said, "That is an interesting point. Let me think about it and get back to you." His calm and confident answer impressed everyone. The phrase, "let me get back to you," is very common in professional English. It means you will respond later after thinking or checking. For example, if a colleague asks, "Do you know the exact numbers?" you could reply, "Let me get back to you after I check." Here is another situation. Clara was traveling by bus. A tourist asked her, "Can you tell me how to get to the museum?" Clara replied, "Sure, it is just 2 stops from here. You can get off at the main square." The tourist thanked her warmly. The phrase, "Can you tell me how to get to," is one of the most practical questions for traveling. You can also say, "Could you tell me the way to," or simply, "How do I get to?" These are essential expressions when asking for directions. Now let us talk about Peter again. One weekend, he invited his neighbors for tea. After serving them, he asked politely, "Would you like some more sugar?" His neighbor replied, "Just a little, thank you." This short but polite exchange made the conversation comfortable. The phrase, "Would you like some more?" is useful in many social situations. For example, "Would you like some more water?" Or, "Would you like some more rice?" It is polite and friendly when offering something. Here is another story. Susan went to the bank to open a new account. The clerk asked her for some documents. Susan realized she had forgotten one paper and said, "I will bring the document tomorrow." Could you please keep my application on hold until then? The clerk agreed politely. The phrase on hold means to pause something temporarily. For example, let us put this plan on hold until next month, or the project is on hold because we need more information. This is useful in both business and daily life. Now let us move to James. He was invited to dinner at his colleague's house. When he arrived, he said, "Thank you for having me. Everything looks wonderful." His colleague smiled and said, "It is our pleasure." This polite exchange created a warm atmosphere. The phrase, "Thank you for having me," is often used when visiting someone's home or attending an event. For example, after a party, you could say, "Thank you for having me. I had a lovely time." It shows good manners. Next, let us look at Hannah. She was studying for an exam, but she felt very tired. Her friend told her, "Take a short break. It will help you focus better." Hannah followed the advice, and she was able to continue studying with more energy. The phrase "take a short break" is useful in many contexts. For example, let us take a short break before continuing the meeting, or I need to take a short break from my work. It helps you sound natural in English. Now let me share a story about Robert. He went to the library and wanted a specific book. The librarian said, "I am afraid it has already been borrowed." Robert asked politely, "Could you please reserve it for me when it is returned?" The librarian agreed, and Robert was satisfied. The phrase, "reserve it for me," is very practical. For example, at a restaurant, you can say, "Could you please reserve a table for two?" Or when borrowing something, you can say, "Can you reserve this book for me?" Now let us hear about Emily again. She was at work when her colleague sneezed several times. Emily said, "Bless you. Are you feeling okay?" Her colleague smiled and replied, "Thank you. I think I am catching a cold." This short exchange showed kindness. The phrase, "bless you," is commonly used when someone sneezes. It is a cultural habit in English-speaking countries. You can use it in friendly or professional settings. Here is another character, Daniel. He was cooking dinner, but the recipe said, "add a pinch of salt." Daniel was not sure how much that was, so he called his wife and asked, "What does a pinch mean?" She explained, "It means a very small amount, like holding salt between your fingers." Daniel laughed and continued cooking. The word pinch is useful when talking about small amounts. For example, add a pinch of sugar, or just a pinch of spice is enough. Now let us move to Sophia. She was in a meeting when her phone rang loudly. She quickly turned it off and said, "I apologize for the interruption." Everyone nodded politely, and the meeting continued smoothly. The phrase, "I apologize for the interruption," is very formal and useful in professional contexts. For example, if you enter a room during a discussion, you can say, "I apologize for the interruption." Another example comes from Henry. He was buying train tickets. The clerk asked, "Would you like a one-way ticket or a return ticket?" Henry replied, "A return ticket, please." He learned that one-way means only going to a place, while return means going and coming back. The phrase one-way and return are essential for traveling. You can also hear round trip in American English. Now imagine Lisa. She works in customer service. A client said, "I am not satisfied with this product." Lisa replied politely, "I understand your concern. Let me see how I can help you." Her calm response helped solve the problem. The phrase, "I understand your concern," is polite and shows empathy. You can use it in work situations or even in family discussions. For example, If your husband says, "I am worried about our expense," let us begin with Mia. She was traveling by plane for the first time. When the flight attendant came by, Mia asked, "Excuse me, could you please explain how to fasten the seatbelt?" The attendant smiled and showed her. Mia felt more relaxed during the flight. The phrase, "Could you please explain how to," is useful in many daily situations. For example, you can say, "Could you please explain how to pay this bill online?" Or, "Could you please explain how to use this machine?" It sounds polite and shows respect. Now let us talk about Oliver. He was invited to speak at a conference. Before starting his talk, he said, "It is an honor to be here today." This short sentence made him sound polite and professional, and the audience appreciated his respect. The phrase, "It is an honor to be here," is common in formal speeches, but you can also use it in smaller settings. For example, if you are invited to someone's home for the first time, you can say, "It is an honor to be here with you." Here is another example. Anna was late to meet her friend at a cafe. When she arrived, she said, "Thank you for waiting for me. I am sorry I was late." Her friend replied, "No problem, I did not mind waiting." The phrase, "Thank you for waiting," is a good way to show appreciation when someone waits for you. For example, "Thank you for waiting while I finished the call." This makes your English polite and natural. Next, let us hear about David. He went to the doctor because he was feeling unwell. After examining him, the doctor said, "You should get some rest and drink plenty of water." David followed the advice, and he recovered quickly. The phrase, "get some rest," is useful when talking about health. For example, "You look tired. You should get some rest." Or, "I need to get some rest before the exam tomorrow." It is simple, but very common in English. Now let us look at Grace. She was working on a group project at school. When someone suggested an idea she liked, Grace said, "That is a great idea. Let us try it." Her positive attitude encouraged the group to move forward. The phrase, "That is a great idea," is very supportive. For example, if a friend says, "Let us go for a walk after dinner," you can reply, "That is a great idea." It shows agreement and encouragement. Here is a story about Ethan. He wanted to buy a new phone, but he was not sure which one to choose. He asked the shop assistant, "What do you recommend?" The assistant explained the options, and Ethan made a good choice. The phrase, "What do you recommend?" is useful in many situations, such as in restaurants, shops, or even when choosing movies. For example, "What do you recommend from the menu?" Or, "What book do you recommend?" Now let us talk about Isabella. She visited her grandmother. When she arrived, she said, "It is so good to see you. How have you been?" Her grandmother smiled warmly and shared about her week. The phrase, "How have you been?" is a friendly way to ask about someone's recent life. It is often used when you have not seen someone for a while. For example, "I have not seen you in months. How have you been?" Next, let us hear about Jack. He was at work when his manager gave him a new task. Jack replied confidently, "I will handle it." This short phrase showed that he was ready to take responsibility. The phrase, "I will handle it," is powerful. You can use it in many contexts, such as at home. "Do not worry about the dishes. I will handle it." Or at work, "Leave the report to me. I will handle it." Now let us move to Emma. She was walking in the park when she saw a tourist looking confused. She walked over and asked, "Do you need any help?" The tourist replied, "Yes, I am trying to find the train station." Emma gave clear directions, and the tourist thanked her. The phrase, "Do you need any help?" is simple and kind. You can use it in daily life. For example, if someone is carrying heavy bags, you can say, "Do you need any help?" Here is another character, Lucas. He wanted to surprise his friend with a birthday gift. When the shop assistant asked, "Would you like it gift wrapped?" Lucas replied, "Yes, please, that would be perfect." The phrase gift wrapped is useful when shopping for presents. You can also say, "Could you please wrap it for me?" Now let us hear about Sarah. She was having dinner at a restaurant. When the waiter brought the food, she said, "This looks delicious." Her polite comment made the waiter smile. The phrase, "This looks delicious," is common when talking about food. You can also say, "This smells wonderful," or "This tastes amazing." These are good ways to compliment food in English. Here's a story about Noah. He joined a new company and wanted to introduce himself. He said, "Hi everyone, my name is Noah. I am excited to work with you." His colleagues welcomed him warmly. The phrase, "I am excited to work with you," is positive and professional. You can also use it in school or projects. For example, "I am excited to work with you on this project." Next, let us look at Chloe. She was at a cafe and her coffee spilled on the table. She quickly said to the waiter, "I am so sorry, it was an accident." The waiter cleaned it up without any problem. The phrase, "It was an accident," is useful when something goes wrong unintentionally. For example, if you drop someone's pen, you can say, "I am sorry, it was an accident." Here is another example. Benjamin wanted to buy train tickets, but the machine was not working. He asked the station staff, "Where can I buy a ticket manually?" The staff directed him to the counter. The word manually means doing something by hand, without using machines. For example, I had to write the report manually because the computer was broken. Now let us talk about Zoe. She was applying for a job. In her interview, the manager asked, "Why do you want this job?" Zoe replied, "Because I am passionate about helping people and learning new skills." Her answer impressed the manager. The phrase, "I am passionate about," is excellent for interviews and conversations. For example, "I am passionate about teaching," or "I am passionate about music." Next, let us hear about Ryan. He was playing football with his friends. When someone made a good move, Ryan said, "Nice job." This small encouragement made the game more enjoyable. The phrase "nice job" is a quick and friendly way to compliment someone. You can also say "good work" or "well done." Here is a story about Sophia. She was at a bakery and wanted bread. She asked the shopkeeper, "Could I have a loaf of bread, please?" The shopkeeper gave her a fresh loaf. The word loaf is used for bread. For example, "I bought 2 loaves of bread yesterday." Now let us move to Daniel. He was taking a taxi. When he arrived, he told the driver, "Keep the change." The driver smiled and thanked him. The phrase "keep the change" is common when you give more money than the price and do not want the balance back. For example, if the bill is 95 and you give 100, you can say, "Keep the change." Let us begin with Emma. She was walking her dog in the park when she noticed a man struggling to carry several heavy boxes. She went over and said politely, "Would you like some help?" The man smiled and said, "Yes, thank you. That would be very kind of you." Emma helped him carry the boxes, and he was very grateful. The phrase, "Would you like some help?" is a friendly and polite way to offer assistance. You can use it in many situations. For example, "Would you like some help with your homework?" Or "Would you like some help carrying those bags?" Next we have Michael. He recently started learning how to cook. One day he burned the rice. Instead of getting frustrated, he said to himself, "Mistakes are part of learning." Then he tried again and cooked perfectly the next time. The phrase, "mistakes are part of learning," is motivating and useful in everyday life. You can say it when learning new skills such as English, cooking, or even driving. It reminds you to stay positive even when things go wrong. Now let us hear about Olivia. She went to a friend's house for dinner. When she arrived, she noticed her friend had prepared a vegetarian meal. Olivia said politely, "Thank you for preparing this. It looks wonderful." Her friend felt appreciated, and they enjoyed the meal together. The phrase, "it looks wonderful," is a simple but effective way to compliment someone politely. You can also use it for food, clothes, or even home decoration. "Your new sofa looks wonderful," or "your painting looks wonderful." Here is another story about Daniel. He was driving to work when it started raining heavily. Traffic slowed down, and he felt impatient. Then he reminded himself, being patient will make the journey safer. He took a deep breath and continued, calmly. The phrase "being patient will make it better," or "being patient will make the journey safer" is very useful when facing challenges. You can also say, "being patient will help me finish this task," or "being patient will solve the problem." Next, we have Sarah. She was at a bookstore and wanted a particular novel. When the shop assistant told her it was out of stock, she replied, "Could you please tell me when it will be available?" The assistant provided the information, and Sarah returned later to buy the book. The phrase, "Could you please tell me when?" is practical in many situations. For example, "Could you please tell me when the next bus arrives?" Or "Could you please tell me when the library opens?" It is polite and effective. Now let us talk about Jack. He was attending an online class, but his internet connection kept dropping. He sent a message to the teacher. "I am having technical difficulties. Could you please repeat the last part?" The teacher responded. The phrase, "I am having technical difficulties," is very common for online learning or remote work. You can also say, "I am having trouble with my computer," or "I am having difficulty understanding this." Here is a story about Hannah. She went to a clothing store and tried on a jacket. When she asked the shop assistant, "Does this come in another color?" The assistant checked and replied, "Yes, we have it in blue and black." Hannah chose the blue one happily. The phrase, "Does this come in another color?" is very useful when shopping. You can also say, "Do you have this in a different size?" Or, "Is this available in another style?" These questions are common in real-life conversations. Now let us hear about Benjamin. He was volunteering at a community center. A young boy asked him, "Can you teach me how to paint?" Benjamin replied, "Of course. Let's start with simple shapes first." The boy learned quickly and enjoyed the activity. The phrase, "let's start with," is helpful when giving instructions. For example, "Let's start with the introduction," or "Let's start with the first exercise." It makes your instructions clear and polite. Next, we have Grace. She was attending a meeting, and the manager asked her opinion about a project. Grace said, "I think we could improve this part by adding more examples." The manager appreciated her constructive feedback. The phrase, "I think we could improve," is useful when offering suggestions politely. You can also say, "I think we could try another method," or "I think we could explain this more clearly." Here is another story about Lucas. He was cooking dinner and realized he forgot an important ingredient. He called his wife and said, "Could you please bring some from the store?" She replied quickly, and he continued cooking without any stress. The phrase, "Could you please bring," is polite and widely used in requests. For example, "Could you please bring me a glass of water?" Or, "Could you please bring the book from the shelf?" Now let us move to Sophie. She was attending a seminar. When she wanted to ask a question, she raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, may I ask something?" The speaker smiled and allowed her to ask. The phrase, "May I ask something?" is polite and respectful. You can also say, "May I ask a question?" or "May I ask for your advice?" It is suitable for professional or educational settings. Next, we have Henry. He went to a restaurant and noticed that his order was slightly different from what he expected. He said politely, "Excuse me, I think there is a small mistake with my order. Could you please check?" The waiter corrected it immediately. The phrase, "I think there is a small mistake," is helpful for pointing out minor errors politely. For example, "I think there is a small mistake in this document," or "I think there is a small mistake with my ticket." Here is another example with Emily. She wanted to surprise her husband by baking a cake. While preparing, she said to herself, "I will try my best and enjoy the process." When the cake was ready, he loved it, and Emily felt proud of herself. The phrase, "I will try my best," is motivating and polite. You can use it in many situations. I will try my best to finish the project, or I will try my best to learn English faster. Now let us hear about Oliver. He went to a cafe and wanted a coffee to take away. He said politely, "Could I have a cappuccino to go, please?" The barista smiled and prepared it quickly. The phrase "to go" is commonly used in cafes and restaurants. For example, "I would like a sandwich to go," or "Can I have my food to go?" It is practical for daily life. Next, we have Rachel. She was in a grocery store and wanted to find fresh vegetables. She asked a staff member, "Excuse me, where can I find the vegetables?" The staff showed her the correct aisle. The phrase, "Where can I find," is simple and very useful. For example, "Where can I find the restroom?" or "Where can I find a taxi?" It helps in navigating new places. Now let us look at Michael again. He was attending a workshop. During a group activity, he said, "Let us divide the tasks so we can finish faster." The team agreed, and they completed the task efficiently. The phrase, "Let us divide the tasks," is practical for teamwork. You can also say, "Let us divide the responsibilities," or "Let us divide the work evenly." It shows leadership and cooperation. Here is another story about Hannah. She was reading a new book and came across an unfamiliar word. She said to herself, "I will look it up in the dictionary." Later, she understood the meaning and remembered it for future use. The phrase, "look it up," is common in English learning. You can also say, "I will look it up online," or "I need to look it up in the manual." It is useful for finding information quickly. Next, we have Daniel. He was planning a family picnic. He asked his wife, "Should we bring sandwiches or a full meal?" They decided on sandwiches because it was easier to carry. The phrase, "should we," is very useful for suggestions. For example, "Should we take a taxi or walk?" Or "Should we start with this task first?" It is polite and conversational. Now let us hear about Sophia. She went to a museum and saw an artwork she liked very much. She said to the guide, "Could you please tell me more about this painting?" The guide explained the story behind it, and Sophia enjoyed the visit even more. The phrase, "Could you please tell me more about," is useful for learning or asking questions politely. For example, Could you please tell me more about the schedule? Or, could you please tell me more about this topic? Here's another example with Benjamin. He was cleaning the house and found an old photo. He said to his wife, "Look at this. Do you remember this day?" They laughed and shared memories happily. The phrase, "Do you remember this day?" is helpful for starting conversations about memories. For example, "Do you remember our trip to the beach?" Or, "Do you remember the first time we met?" Next, we have Chloe. She wanted to practice English with her neighbor. She asked, "Would you like to practice English with me for a few minutes?" Her neighbor agreed, and they spoke English together every day. Let us begin with Ethan. He was walking through a crowded market when he saw an elderly woman struggling to carry her groceries. He said politely, "May I help you with these bags?" She smiled warmly and said, "Thank you, that would be wonderful." Ethan carried the bags to her car, feeling happy to help. The phrase, "May I help you with?" is polite and useful in many situations. For example, "May I help you with your homework?" Or, "May I help you carry that box?" It shows kindness and good manners. Now let us look at Mia. She was at a local bakery and wanted to order a pastry. She asked, "Could you please tell me what flavors you have today?" The shop assistant listed the options and Mia chose a chocolate croissant. The phrase, "Could you please tell me?" is very practical. For example, "Could you please tell me the time?" Or, "Could you please tell me where the nearest bus stop is?" It is polite and clear. Here is another story about Lucas. He was at a bookstore looking for a specific novel. He asked the shopkeeper, "Do you know if this book is available in another branch?" The shopkeeper checked the system and confirmed it. Lucas was happy to know he could still get the book. The phrase, "Do you know if?" is very helpful when inquiring politely. For example, "Do you know if the restaurant is open today?" Or, "Do you know if this product is on sale?" Next, we have Rachel. She was attending a cooking class. When the instructor showed a complicated technique, Rachel said, "Could you please show me that step again?" The instructor explained patiently, and Rachel followed it perfectly. The phrase, "Could you please show me?" is widely useful. For example, "Could you please show me how to send an email?" Or, "Could you please show me the way to the station?" It is polite and professional. Now let us talk about Henry. He was traveling to a new city and wanted to take a taxi. He asked the driver, "Could you please take me to the central train station?" The driver agreed, and Henry reached his destination comfortably. The phrase, "Could you please take me to?" is very practical for travel. You can also say, "Could you please bring me to the hotel?" Or, "Could you please drop me off at the airport?" Here is another example with Olivia. She was visiting her parents. She said, "I brought some fruits from the market for you." Her parents smiled and said, "Thank you, that is very thoughtful." The phrase "that is very thoughtful" is useful when complimenting someone's actions. For example, "It is very thoughtful of you to help me," or "This gift is very thoughtful." Next, we have Michael. He went to the library to return a book. When he realized he forgot to bring his library card, he politely asked the librarian, "Could I still return it without my card?" The librarian allowed it without any problem. The phrase, "Could I still?" is polite and helpful for asking permission. For example, "Could I still join the meeting if I am late?" Or, "Could I still submit the form today?" Now let us hear about Emma. She was at a pharmacy buying medicine for a cold. She asked, "Could you please recommend something for a mild headache?" The pharmacist suggested a suitable medicine, and Emma felt relieved. The phrase, "Could you please recommend?" is widely used when seeking advice. For example, could you please recommend a good restaurant nearby? Or could you please recommend a book for beginners? Here is another story about Daniel. He was planning a weekend hike with friends. He said, "Let us meet at the park entrance at 8 a.m. so we can start early." His friends agreed, and everyone enjoyed the hike together. The phrase, "let us meet at," is practical for planning events. You can also say, "Let us meet at the cafe," or "Let us meet at the library." It is clear and polite. Next, we have Sophia. She was learning to play the guitar. When she struggled with a chord, she asked her teacher, "Could you please explain this part again?" The teacher showed her carefully, and Sophia played it correctly afterward. The phrase, "Could you please explain?" is very helpful when learning. For example, "Could you please explain this rule?" Or, "Could you please explain how this machine works?" Now let us talk about Benjamin. He was attending a seminar and wanted to take notes. When he missed some information, he asked the speaker politely, "Could you please repeat that point?" The speaker explained again, and Benjamin wrote it down. The phrase, "Could you please repeat?" is useful in conversations and learning situations. For example, "Could you please repeat your email address?" Or, "Could you please repeat the instructions?" Here is a story about Chloe. She wanted to practice speaking English with her husband. She said, "Would you like to read a short story together?" Her husband agreed, and they practiced every evening. The phrase, "Would you like to?" is friendly and inviting. For example, "Would you like to join me for a walk?" Or, "Would you like to watch a documentary?" Next we have Jack. He was attending a workshop and wanted to clarify a point. He said politely, "Excuse me, could you explain that again?" The instructor smiled and provided a clearer explanation. The phrase, "Excuse me, could you?" is polite and commonly used. For example, "Excuse me, could you tell me the time?" Or, "Excuse me, could you help me with this task?" Now let us hear about Hannah. She went shopping for vegetables. She asked the shop assistant, "Could you please tell me which ones are fresh today?" The assistant helped her select the best vegetables. The phrase, "which ones are," is helpful for asking about options. For example, "Which ones are on sale today?" Or, "Which ones are suitable for beginners?" Here is another example with Lucas. He was attending a conference and wanted to network. He said politely, "It is a pleasure to meet you. Could you tell me more about your work?" The other person shared details, and Lucas made a new professional connection. The phrase, "It is a pleasure to meet you," is formal and polite. For example, "It is a pleasure to meet you. I have heard a lot about your company," or "It is a pleasure to meet you in person." Next we have Rachel. She was taking a bus in a busy city. She asked the driver, "Could you please let me know when we reach the main station?" The driver nodded and Rachel got off at the correct stop. The phrase, "Could you please let me know?" is practical for asking for information or updates. For example, "Could you please let me know when the package arrives?" Or, "Could you please let me know the results?" Now let us move to Henry. He was at a restaurant and wanted to try a new dish. He asked the waiter, "Could you please recommend a popular dish here?" The waiter suggested the chef's special, and Henry enjoyed it. The phrase, "Could you please recommend a popular?" is useful for asking advice politely. For example, "Could you please recommend a good hotel?" Or, "Could you please recommend a local dish?" Here is another story about Olivia. She wanted to practice pronunciation with her husband. She said, "Let us practice these words together slowly." They repeated each word carefully, and their English improved. The phrase, "Let us practice," is useful for collaborative activities. For example, Let us practice the exercises together. Or, let us practice speaking in English. Next, we have Michael. He went to a museum and saw an exhibit he did not understand. He asked the guide, "Could you please explain the story behind this exhibit?" The guide provided detailed information, and Michael enjoyed it more. The phrase, "the story behind," is useful for explanations. For example, "Can you tell me the story behind this painting?" Or, "Can you explain the story behind this building?" Now let us hear about Emma. She was buying tickets for a concert. She asked politely, "Could you please tell me the available seats?" The clerk showed her the options, and she chose a good one. The phrase, "the available," is practical when choosing items. For example, "What are the available options?" Or, "Could you show me the available times?" Here is another story about Daniel. He wanted to surprise his wife with flowers. He said, "Could you please wrap these flowers nicely?" The florist wrapped them beautifully, and his wife was delighted. The phrase, "Could you please wrap?" is helpful for polite requests. For example, "Could you please wrap this as a gift?" Or, "Could you please wrap it carefully?" Next we have Sophia. She was learning to swim. Her instructor said, "Take a deep breath and try slowly." Sophia followed the advice and improved her technique. The phrase, "take a deep breath," is common and useful for relaxation and focus. For example, "Take a deep breath before the exam," or "take a deep breath to calm down." Here is another example with Benjamin. He was at a bakery and asked, "Could you please give me a loaf of bread and 2 buns?" The baker packed them carefully and Benjamin paid. The phrase 2 buns is useful when specifying quantity. For example, "I would like 3 apples and 1 orange," or "Can I get 4 cookies, please?" Next we have Chloe. She was attending a seminar and wanted to ask a question. She said, "Excuse me, may I ask a question about this topic?" The speaker welcomed her and she gained clarification. The phrase, "May I ask a question about," is polite and formal. For example, "May I ask a question about your presentation?" Or, "May I ask a question about the homework?"